By this point in the process, you should have already completed your independent education evaluation. You should be in possession of your reports, and they should have been disseminated to the IEP members. And that would include your teacher, anybody else on your IEP team, and it's very important to remember to give them to the other professionals that were on or doing your independent education evaluation. So if you had a speech pathologist and an applied behavior analyst, you would want to exchange their reports between the two of them. All right, so you're getting ready for your IEP meeting. There's some very important rules as relates to an IEP meeting. The first rule, IEP rules. 1. The most important rule is that IEPs do not get developed because you think you know what's best for your child. All right, you need to remember that. We understand that you know your child best, but simply because you think you know what's best for them doesn't mean that that's what's going to get into the IEP. IEPs are created by a consensus of all the IEP team members. So your goal in this IEP meeting is going to be to manipulate the group so that you can get what you want into a consensus. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So it's not about you. Whoops. Second rule, it's not about your evaluations. You either paid for your evaluations or your evaluations were paid for by the school district. But that doesn't mean that every recommendation and what's said in the evaluation is going to end up in the IEP. Again, you have to remember, IEPs are developed by a consensus of the IEP team. You're going to use these evaluations to your benefit to make sure that what you want and what the experts say is best gets into the IEP, but you can't refer to Dr. Smith said this in his evaluation, so therefore that's what we have to do. You can't do that. You'll alienate yourself. You'll make everybody else on the IEP team upset. Later on in the discussion, we'll show you how you work around that to get everybody to agree. Okay? So it's not about you, and it's not about what's in the evaluations. Those are the two critical things you need to remember. The third critical thing, and I've said it many times, is IEPs are created by a consensus. A consensus is not a vote. Everybody isn't going to vote on what they should do. A consensus is everybody is pretty much in agreement. Every single person on the IEP team doesn't need to be in agreement. Maybe you're going to be discussing a behavioral modification plan that the speech pathologist knows nothing about. Maybe you're going to be discussing a speech goal or a speech objective that, you know, a paraprofessional has no input on, or the psychologist has no input on. Those things don't matter. It's not about what you or what you think, even though in your mind you may know what's best for your child. It's not about what's said in the evaluations, what the recommendations are, what the experts have said. Although that's going to be critical later on during the meeting, you can't just reference, well, Dr. Smith said it should be done this way, so that's how we need to do it. You can't go about it that way. And the third thing is, remember that your entire goal in controlling a meeting, and that's a fourth rule, your entire goal in controlling the meeting is making the group come around to your way of thinking and having everybody agree with what you want to get done. And the fourth most important rule is control the meeting. The only difference between this meeting today and other meetings that you've been in is that this time you're going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 people that are actually know a lot more about your child, or at least as much as you do, and a lot more about educating your child than maybe his teacher or the paraprofessional or the speech pathologist or the occupational therapist, okay? So when you walk into the meeting and there's 12 people there, or 15 or 9, and you're thinking to yourself, well, this is just like every other meeting I've been to, it's not, because the difference this time is you have experts, and if you control this meeting correctly, nobody's going to argue with their recommendations, so it's going to be easy to get a consensus. So you're going to be controlling the meeting so that you can get everybody working to thinking your way of thinking. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Does everybody understand that? Mm-hmm. All right. So the rules. It's not about you. It's not about the evaluations. You need to get a consensus, and to get that consensus, you need to control the meeting. All right. So now we're to the meeting. Everybody should have read your evaluations by this time. Do not let the group and or the special ed director or anybody else that wants to be in charge have one of your evaluators or have any other teacher or psychologist spend 20 minutes reading something that everybody should have already read. You have very little time to get things accomplished. You don't want to waste time having somebody that wrote something read it out loud to the entire group. All right? In every big IEP meeting, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have something to write on. I have this easel I can write on. A lot of times you can have it in a classroom where you have a whiteboard or a chalkboard or something like that. You're going to need something you can write on, okay? Because that's going to make it clear for everybody, all right, what's going on, and let everybody follow along.
Wouldn't you say by having an easel, you have a written copy of what you were talking about?
An easel is nice because you can take that with you and then reflect back upon it when you're looking at the draft copy that they send you for your signature.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right? The first thing you're going to want to do is the PLAP, present level of performance, functional performance. All right? That's the present level of functional performance and achievement and functional performance. That's really easy to do because you have that in all your evaluations, all right? So you just basically state, let's just take his present levels out of the, paraphrase them out of the evaluations that we currently have, and we can update it that way, all right? Now, something that's very important is that you need to make clear really early on, almost immediately, without making it seem like you're doing it, you need to take charge of the meeting, all right?